Good evening. Members of the public are encouraged to participate in meetings by accessing the webcast at www.cityofclovis.com/agendas, providing written comments at the same website. 3, participating by phone or by coming to the City Council's meeting in person. I will call this meeting to order, and this evening we'll have the honor of having Troop 68 lead us in the flag salute led by Chandra and her Troop 68, the Boy Scouts. 60? Oh, I'm sorry, 60. So we'll hold Troop, come on up and lead us in the flag salute.
They'll turn it off for you. Okay.
Audience salute. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. 2.
Okay. We have a little memento for all of you. Hope we have enough. They're called challenge coins. Challenge coins? You're very welcome. Let's see. Did you get one? Okay. Here's more. Make sure everybody gets one. Did everybody get one? If you didn't get one, come on out. Who didn't get a coin? Welcome. Everybody take care of it?
Yes.
Okay. Come on up. Thank you, Troop 60. This point we'll call the roll. Here's our clerk. There she is.
Councilmember Bessinger?
Here.
Councilmember Monitoa?
Here.
Councilmember Whalen?
Here.
Mayor Flores?
I'm here.
And Councilmember Ashbeck is absent.
Okay, public comments. This is the opportunity for the members of the public to address the City Council on any matter within the City Council's jurisdiction that is not listed on the agenda. In order for everyone to be heard, please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less, or 10 minutes per topic. Anyone wishing to be placed on the agenda for a specific topic should contact the City Manager's office and submit correspondence at least 10 days before the desired date of appearance. I understand someone wanted to make some public comments here that's present. You can come up to the podium here, give us your name and address, and let us know what's on your mind. Anything that's not on the agenda.
Yeah, not on the agenda. My name is Russell Tidrick. I live at 2592 Tritton Avenue. They're in Clovis. And I'm here today about the landscape and maintenance deficiencies in my area. I've talked to the maintenance yard people here. Nobody's called me back. I contacted Elite Landscape. They would not let me talk to anybody. They have 6 different divisions, and they rotate you on the phone. Nobody talks to you. Nobody calls you back. And we have overgrown trees that are hanging in the roadway. They get hit by the RVs, motorhomes. Actually, the walkways, they're so low you have to go underneath them. They're probably lower than 5 foot. That's in my area. There's overwatering, underwatering. So there's many times we'll give a river of water going down Temperance Avenue, from Shepherd to Nees. Then we have other areas that are underwater and trees are dying. We also have dying trees along Temperance Avenue and Shepherd Avenue that are tagged for removal that aren't being removed, and the ones that, again, that do get removed, the stumps are not being removed. And so they're eyesore, and somebody could get hurt on them, really. There's sprinklers occasionally that will get broken and not repaired, and water, of course, just spewing out, making a bit mess, and losing a lot of water. And we all hate that water issue today. We're losing a lot of water. And being as a taxpayer, we're paying for this maintenance, and you're contracting with an outside service to do this. They're not really doing their job very well. And, you know, if there's damage to vehicles, who's liable for that? Who's responsible? City of Clovis or the contractor? And being a contractor myself, you know, we're paid to do the job and do it right, and well, they're not. And, but nobody seems to be addressing it. So that's what I'm here for today, and I have pictures of all the areas that I've talked about with locations for you guys to review. I can also, I have it on a zip drive. I could bring a zip drive for you, for all of you. And I'd like for you guys to look into it, because it is taxpayers' money that's not being used wisely, and I don't think the contractor is living up to his obligations. So maybe you could review the contract with Elite Landscaping and see what their job really is. And if they're overworked, maybe you should get another guy or two people. Maybe, are they charging too much or not enough? You know, we don't know. I don't know if you know. I don't know how in touch you are with that area, and maybe you leave it up to the maintenance division. But I'm not getting any results as a citizen, and maybe they just don't think I'm important.
We're all important here in Clovis. You can give that information to our clerk, and she'll and we have our public utilities director here, Scott Redell. You might contact him. And do you have some words to say?
No, I'd be happy to meet with him out here, get his information. I think you're talking about the stretch on Temperance between Nees and Shepherd.
Yeah, Temperance between Nees and Shepherd, okay. And also from Temperance to the Wolf on Shepherd.
Okay. Okay. Were you
supposed to contact me?
Go ahead.
Russell, there's also on our phones, you can get an app called the Go request. So if you're out for a walk and you see a broken sprinkler, you can hit the Go request, it geolocates it, you can take a picture of it and submit it so you don't have to get stuck on the phone trying to find somebody who knows what they're doing. And it goes directly to the city, and we get on that fairly quickly. And
yeah, I noticed they had, they're fixing some concrete, and they get the lights, you know, every now and then, you know. I just think it's the problem that kind of got out of hand, and just take advantage of the city.
Well, and also on that Go request, just so that you know, they will report back to you when the problem has been addressed, and then they give you an opportunity to evaluate their performance. So it's been a very effective tool for us to be able to kind of identify issues. I use it just when I'm on the trail. And then, you know, they take care of it. They let me know it's been taken care of. So we really would like for you, if you don't mind, to download that app so that you can, when you see an issue, let them know. But also talk to Scott.
What does that have to be?
Go request. G-O, G-O, and then request.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Do you need anything from me, Terrence? No? Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is James Barunda, Jr., and I'm here on behalf of my father, James Barunda, concerning the property on 142 Sunnyside. I'm sorry. And I wrote something with my father's help for the council this evening. My business here is regarding the property of 142 Sunnyside. My father, James Barunda, cannot physically speak tonight, so I'll be speaking for him. He bought his property at 142 Sunnyside in 1983. For all those reasons we know why we live in Clovis, the schools, security. After January 3rd, 2022, the water main on Sunnyside burst and flooded out his home and 3 other of his neighbors. all things inside his house beyond repair. My father has received an offer from the city that does not provide him the purchase power to own another home in Clovis. One of the comps on the appraisal was from Belmont and Maple. Now, I'm no expert in real estate, but I do know that this area of Fresno cannot compare with any lot of land in Clovis. The council has also set a 20-day deadline for my father to take this life-altering decision when the city took over 9 months to come up with theirs, assuring him the whole process that his house would be repaired and he would be in it shortly. September 30th, we found out otherwise when he received an offer from the Chester Walls, the attorney. My father's request is not trying to be difficult. All he requests, as well as the neighbors, is to make right what has been wronged. If the city main that burst on Sunnyside was indeed the city's responsibility, then why have the repairs not been made? Is it because the cost is too expensive to make the necessary repairs? Is it because of the social status of the people living in the affected areas? One of my neighbors, my dad's neighbors, is a single mother. My father, as you can see, is disabled and has been since 1995. And our neighbor to the left, also disabled elderly woman who cannot be here tonight. My father raises 4 children here and lives very safely in this great city. With our neighbors, we embody community, family, and most importantly, we embody Clovis. I like to believe this city council has made this decision because they have not seen the people that they have affected and just see the homes that are affected. So this is our goal for tonight. My father is quadriplegic with the inability to speak. Despite these circumstances, he has never felt as marginalized as he does now. I grew up hearing and believing in the old adage that Clovis is a way of life. I plead with you members of the council, please let us show this city that we have not lost our way. My father would like, along with his neighbors, more time to make this decision than the 20 days that have been allotted, this Thursday being the deadline, and careful consideration for other options other than being bought out and cast aside. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment on something not on the agenda?
Good evening, council members. Thank you for your time. I was born and raised in Clovis, and I'm proud to be part of this community. I'm here on behalf of myself and also my neighbors. We are from Cadence Community off of Bullard and Leonard. It is a newer development. We have a dire situation, and we're making a request for the city of Clovis to take action. My husband and I purchased our home and waited 9 months for it to be built. It was our dream to own a home in Clovis and enjoy the Clovis way of life. We finally moved in the end of April 2021, and we were excited to be in a neighborhood with a park as well as trails for walking and biking together as a family. Summer 2021 was great in our neighborhood. We met a lot of people, a lot of children. Half of the neighborhood was still not complete, so we were excited to see the progress and see other new families move in. October 2021, things started to change. We noticed a large amount of mosquitoes every time we went outside or tried to enjoy our backyard. A few minutes outside was all it took to be bitten multiple times on each leg. We had a small gathering in our driveway with the new neighbors we met on Halloween, and we had to light 4 citronella candles, and it pretty much did not do anything, and we were bit up. Winter came, and a lot of them died off, so we figured it was just, a fluke with the cooler weather after the summer. Fast forward to spring 2022, and the Cadence neighborhood has now been completed. Everyone has moved in, and everybody is trying to be outside enjoying the spring weather. Only now, the mosquitoes have become drastically worse. I called the Mosquito Abatement because our yards were overrun with them. They came out, they surveyed our house, and I'm sorry, I lost my spot. They were in our garage, in our front yard and backyard, and in our house as well. They informed me that the city of Clovis had decided to change the draining system requirements for new homes being constructed. The yard drains no longer run to the street for drainage. Now they are required to empty in the front of the yards near the sidewalk. They informed me that the drains no longer have a direct vertical line to the street, but a curved line towards the end that empties into the front yards. This is causing a small amount of water to be trapped in the drains. All mosquitoes need is a tiny amount of stagnant water to lay their eggs, and they can lay hundreds of them. So they are getting into the drains where the stagnant water is, laying their eggs, and then once the water runs through again, they hatch and escape through the drains. And this is happening in every single drain in the Cadence community. I have statements from all 6 other neighbors. The representative from Mosquito Abatement said that filters can be installed in the drains to keep the mosquitoes from getting in, laying eggs, and then from the new ones being hatched and released. But he said it would take the combined effort from all the neighbors taking the same action with their drains, because if one person doesn't have them in the neighborhood, then they will gather towards that area and our area will still be affected. My parents live 5 minutes away from me off of Locan and Gettysburg, and they do not have this issue in their neighborhood. Their neighborhood was built in 2003, and their drains all go directly to the street, so there is no stagnant water around. So this is not due to our location, but due to the drainage system trapping water and the drainage requirement. Our family no longer spends any time outside, and we have to go so far as literally running to and from our car when we get home, because they literally are just right there. I don't even know how they know to find us, but it's crazy. You only have to step outside for 10 seconds before you're surrounded. We have also had to install a mosquito bug catcher inside of our house, because all it takes for one to get inside, and then they're all over our house too. My boys were waking up with bug bites every morning, so I run that every single night in my kitchen. And this is the same story with many others throughout our neighborhood. Our community is also concerned with the safety and health due to the West Nile virus, which they have said has been detected in parts of Fresno County. So the Cadence community is requesting a call to action by the city of Clovis. We are requesting that Clovis resolve this issue by working with the mosquito abatement to make the drains mosquito-proof for the health and safety of the residents in our community. And I have copies of statements from other residents and a picture as well for your consideration. Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, I didn't get your name.
Heather Miller.
Heather. I live in Clovis. I live at Clovis and Alluvial, and I had similar problems, and I have French drains, kind of what you had. And what I did was I took window screens and I covered the drain head, and then just kind of took a rubber band and just pushed it back down so it keeps anything from coming out or going in. I don't know if that would help, but it seemed to help my problem a little bit, but everybody would have to be on board, like you said.
Yeah, because it's a newer neighborhood and it's all drought-resistant landscaping, literally there's 2 of these drains in front of every single house throughout the entire community. So if I did it, and nobody else did it in the neighborhood, it's not really solving the problem. So, but thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Anyone else wishing to make a comment on a topic not on the agenda?
Oh, it's not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and city staff. First, my name is Jean Johnson. I live at 2963 Ashcroft Avenue. That's right off the Locan. First, I'm going to start off by giving out thanks to Julie, who works in the building department, and then Diane B., who works with the city manager. They have the patience, they have the time to listen to my concern. Here's the concern, 2930 Locan. It's been quiet. I've been here 8 years, and it has been quiet neighborhood. I live in a senior neighborhood. I love my neighbors, and we love sharing ideas. We take care after each other. We respect each other. But before September the 29th, when I called the building department and let them know that what in the world is being resurrected on the south side of our homes, we heard jackhammers, backhoes, drills, hammering, mariachi music. It was on, and they forgot to invite us. What happened was, like I said, where I live, there's seniors. Luckily, I take care of one senior who lives right behind the main part of the home at 2930 Locan. Oh, he would complain. Could you do something? Could you shut up that noise? It's rude. It was unprofessional. And before the construction started, if I were the neighbor, I don't care what you do to your house, your backyard. You could build a bunker. You can do whatever you want. But at least have the courtesy to go out and let your neighbors know, hey, we're going to have this heavy equipment coming up, and so, you know, we hope that you're okay with it. Here's the time that I can do my construction, so on and so forth. We had no problem with that. But the problem was the noise wouldn't stop. So September the 29th, I called, and I left a message for Jesse, left a message, no answer. That was at 9:30 in the morning. Then at 2:41, I left a message on the general line for Nicole saying, hey, I'm getting impatient here. I want some action done. Well, I didn't hear from Jesse till October the 3rd. And you know how many hours of beauty sleep I missed? I missed a lot, as you can tell, because every morning I would wake up, and sometimes at 6, you know, it was pathetic. It was not a good moment for me. I was ready to go and start some, let's not go there. So October the 3rd, Jesse finally calls me and says, well, okay, he heard me complain, so he said, I'll send an inspector out tomorrow. Okay, you only knew about this on the 29th. You're going to send one out on the 4th. So I waited. My neighbor waited. We waited. 5 o'clock whistle. Nah, not going to come today. Finally, on the 5th, I heard from a young man, Ryan. First, Jesse, I'm sorry, back up. Jesse told me there were no permits for that construction going on. No permits at all. So when Ryan came to inspect everything on the 5th, he then had to enter to the address on my neighbor across the street. So we entered through the backyard. He saw what was going on. He went to his truck, checked his little computer. The only thing that he ever saw for a permit was a water filter from the old neighbor. Okay, because we never heard from that neighbor anyway. It was quiet. Well, lo and behold, okay, he now knew what we were complaining about, and it was loud. I have video to show how loud it was. But I'm not going to go there because my language was not was very inappropriate. But then, mind you, I did mine the 29th. We didn't get I didn't hear from Jesse till the 3rd. Well, then the city was called by an anonymous caller on 6 homes on the north side of his property for illegal construction. And they don't have permits. Really? Ryan was in the backyard of one of them. He saw the neighbor to the east, the neighbor to the west. There was no construction going on. I told Ryan, I said, I'm not stupid. I know who made that phone call. Of course, it was the new owner to the home that was doing all the construction that called. Because his report, his complaint, the building inspectors were there faster than mine. A day later, they were there. There were 3 inspectors. It was Jesse, Ryan, Dawn. Dawn has a horrible attitude because he upset one of my neighbors because she called me and she just, oh, okay, I heard her out. I understood her.
Can you?
Oh, I understand.
What is your point? What is your main complaint?
My main complaint is your inspectors can't get it together. Okay? They needed to get it together. Don't lie to me. Don't BS me. Don't do nothing like that.
Okay.
Okay, when you have some construction going on and I call, I want a fast response just like him. Just because I'm not a I don't have a construction company and I don't have a pool company that goes out there, he has the inspectors in his back pocket. Really? And I'm a taxpayer, just like everyone else here in this room. I was not happy.
Okay.
No, I was not happy with those inspectors. My 5 minutes isn't up yet because I'm really upset at the city. I'm not happy.
Anything else?
Yeah, I'm still, oh yeah, you better believe it. I want my 5 minutes because it was rude. I lost a lot of beauty sleep.
If I can make a recommendation, it's going to be to refer
Is it my 5 minutes yet? I don't see a timer here. I'm upset.
We're keeping time, so yes, you've gone past.
Oh, guess what? Not according to my phone. I still probably have about a minute and a half.
Mayor, I'd recommend that you
my name's not Mary.
refer Ms. Jonason to Renee Mathis, and we can get the details and follow up on it.
She's back there. She'll listen to your complaint. And
I really don't want to complain or speak to any other city employee because when I have some building going on at my home, it's going to be illegal, like everything. That was just rude what he did. He has those inspectors in his back pocket, and you can't tell me he doesn't, because he does. And it's not nice to cut me off my 5 minutes. That's the way I felt about my beauty sleep.
thank you. Anyone else wishing to make comment?
My name is Charles Bro, and the reason I'm here tonight is because of a situation that has arisen at Gettysburg School. The city clerk said that she would distribute my written comments to you so that you could read them and see what my concern is. My real concern is I've almost been killed twice out there because the signage and the crosswalks at Gettysburg School are so faded that drivers can't see them. In addition to that, I would say that the signage is probably no more than 20 yards away from the crosswalk, and it creates a situation where drivers aren't going to see it until the last minute. Now, you'll notice here that I've provided you, I think, with sufficient information, but there are a couple of things to which I would specifically like to speak. You'll also notice that I mentioned under item number 3 that the crosswalks are pitted to a depth of a couple of inches. That's the crosswalks that are pitted, as well as many other places in that particular street, Gettysburg Avenue. You'll notice that I finally found the Public Works Department and asked to speak with the director, but wasn't able to. But I had a good conversation with the representative of the department. You'll notice it says here the Public Works only paints school crosswalks and signage in June. Ostensibly, that would be because school is out. Well, the school is out during Thanksgiving, and it's out during Christmas, and it's out during spring break, and it's out during the period of summer vacation. It seems to me as though it would be possible to do any school painting that is needed during those periods as well. I was told that they had repainted in June, I believe, of 2022. That was the kind of information I was given. But if your paint is that bad that it is now worn out, you're buying bad paint, or it needs to be repainted on a continual basis. In addition to that, you'll notice here it says street paint dries in 4 hours. That's what they told me. If it dries in 4 hours, then that means that it should be really easy, especially during the periods when school is not in session, to set up detours and get it done in a day. You'll also notice here that it mentions here, they say that for repainting, they have to check with the traffic department. Can't be that tough. Get on the phone, call them up, say, we're going to do this day, and we need you to recognize that and notify all the other agencies that might need information. They also mentioned that why isn't there a police officer out there? I agree, absolutely. I see officers go through there at 7:30. I see them go through at 8:30. I don't see officers out there during the period when school buses and children are arriving at school. So it seems to me as though your city manager could talk to the police chief and see if there isn't some way that when officers are not busy at these schools on a rotating basis, there doesn't have to be somebody out there every day, but on a rotating basis, maybe one day at Gettysburg, maybe one day out at Nelson, at Fort Washington, one day at some other school like Dry Creek, but keep police officers out there because those cars are going through there at 40 and 50 miles an hour during the time when children are arriving for school. You'll also notice here that I have mentioned that I was told that the regulation of these crosswalks and signage are regulated by the state, that it's in the codes, which I've heard before, that it's in the codes. And I requested that I be notified as to what code it was in so that I could take a look at it. Because if signage can only be put 60 feet away from a crosswalk, then let's get the law changed. I mean, it's not that hard. I've written 3 sections of California law myself. Get the law changed so that that signage has to be 100 feet away and 300 feet away where possible so that people have repetitious recognition that there is a school zone which is coming up. Now, you'll also notice that I've asked for an audit of the Public Works Department and its efficiency in handling its scheduling. I truly believe that the Public Works Department perhaps could be more efficient in its handling of emergency situations. And in fact, I would ask your council to issue an emergency declaration, if necessary, to get somebody out there to paint those things because the ramifications for the city are run very deep. If, for example, a child gets killed out there tomorrow, a good lawyer is going to look at these excuses and say, you can only paint during June? It only takes 4 hours for this paint to dry? Why haven't you gotten this done? So the ramifications for the city could either be a couple $100 worth of paint or a lot of money. And I would urge your council to consider an emergency declaration to get the Public Works Department out there and get those crosswalks and signage painted in the brightest yellow that they can possibly put on the street. The items that are there, which include overhead yellow lights, they include a sign that says crosswalk, are not doing the job. And the only thing that's going to stop them is some police presence probably at every school and to have the signage there which will make people recognize that this is a real danger zone. And I know it's a danger zone because, like I say, I've almost been killed twice walking the dog. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. I know Mr. Rudolph will address that. Anyone else wishing to make comments during this public comment time? Anyone on the web?
No.
Okay, we'll move on. Ordinance and resolutions. With respect to the approval of resolutions and ordinances, the reading of the title shall be deemed a motion to waive a reading of the complete resolution or ordinance. And unless there is a request by the council member that the resolution or ordinance be read in full, further reading of the resolution or ordinance shall be deemed waived by unanimous consent of the council. Consent calendar. Consent items considered routine in nature are to be placed on the consent calendar. They will all be considered and voted upon one vote as one item unless a council member requests individual consideration. A council member's vote in favor of the consent calendar is considered and recorded as a separate affirmative vote in favor of each action listed. Motions in favor of adoption of the consent calendar are deemed to include a motion to waive the reading of any ordinance or resolution on the consent calendar. For adoption of ordinances, only those that have received a unanimous vote upon introduction are considered consent items. Does any council member want to pull any item to be considered individually? Nope. Nope. Does anyone in chambers here, anyone in the public wishing to pull any item from the consent calendar? Hearing none. Anyone on the web?
No.
I'll bring it back to the council. What is your pleasure?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second to approve The consent calendar, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So it's a four for yes, no zero, no no's, and one absence. Public hearing. Public hearing is an open consideration within a regular or special meeting of the City Council for which special notice has been given and may be required. When a public hearing is continued, noticing of the adjourned item is required as per Government Code 54,955.1. Our first item is item H, consider various actions related to the Public Utilities Director position. A, consider introduction of an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Clovis amending Article 5, Department of Public Utilities, Section 2.2501 and 2.2502, and adding Sections 2.2503 and 2.2504 of Chapter 2.2, Officers and Employees of the Clovis Municipal Code pertaining to the Department of Public Utilities and the position of Public Utilities Director, and B, consider approval of a resolution authorizing amendments to the Public Utilities Director classification within the Public Utilities Department. Our staff presenting will be Lori Chivalry, Personnel Risk Manager.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Tonight we are introducing amendments and additions to the Ordinance and Administration section of the Clovis Municipal Code for the Public Utilities Director. We are proposing amendments to Sections 22501 and 22502 and adding Sections 22503 and 22504 to the Officers and Employees section of the Clovis Municipal Code pertaining to the Department of Public Utilities and the position of Public Utilities Director, and seeking approval of a resolution authorizing amendments to the Public Utilities Director classification. The proposed ordinance revisions more clearly define the Public Utilities Director role as Superintendent of Streets in conformance with state law and the Streets and Highways Code, and the need for the Public Utilities Director to possess a current and valid civil engineer license from the State of California Department of Consumer Affairs Board for Professional Engineers, Land Surveyors, and Geologists. The ordinance revision also codifies the Public Utilities Director's authority to approve Public Utility Department maintenance and operation plans and specifications, and to inspect and approve city public utility and maintenance improvements prior to acceptance by the city. These are duties that are required of the Public Utilities Director, and this ordinance more clearly defines the required job duties. Again, if approved, this ordinance will more clearly define the duties that are performed by the Public Utilities Director and better defines the authority of the position. The job classification is also being updated to state the current job duties that the Public Utilities Director is performing. We are also seeking approval of the revised job classification. This concludes my presentation. We are here to answer any questions.
Questions for Lori?
Does our current Public Utilities Director have a civil engineer license?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
We've come to like you, so it'd be awful if we passed it and then you were gone.
No other questions? Okay, I'll open it to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item? No one? Anyone on the web?
No.
I'll bring it back to the council. What is your pleasure on this?
I'll move that we approve.
On B, the resolution? Second.
Yeah, sorry, let's go with the,
Ordinance first.
yeah, let's go with the introduction of the ordinance first.
And that's your second? Second. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So it's 4 with no nays and 1 absence. Second is B, consider the approval of the resolution.
I move that we approve the resolution.
Second. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. So it's 4 ayes, no noes, and an absence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 9, consider items related to the incorporation of vehicle miles traveled, VMT, into the general plan circulation element, City of Clovis applicant. A, consider approval of a resolution a request to certify a supplemental environmental impact report, adopt findings of facts, and adopt a mitigation monitoring and reporting program. B, consider approval of a resolution, GPA 2022-03, a request to amend the 2014 general plan to incorporate policy changes to the circulation element to incorporate provisions related to the vehicle miles traveled traffic impact evaluation criterion. And C, consider approval of a resolution, a request to adopt updated transportation impact analysis guidelines. And our city planner, Mr. Merchant, will be our presenter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. As you noted, there are 3 items included with the project under consideration this evening. Starting from the bottom of the items on the screen, the initial item that we want to talk about is an update to the Transportation Impact Analysis Guidelines, which I'll probably end up referring to as the TIA guidelines. That's really where we started as an organization when we began dealing with VMT, or vehicle miles traveled. Item B is the second item. That's a set of general plan goals and policies that we're incorporating into the circulation element to address VMT, and that's really intended to have maybe what we could call vertical consistency between the state law, our general plan, and those TIA guidelines. And then the third item is a supplemental environmental impact report and accompanying documents that are intended to address both the general plan amendments and those TIA guidelines from a CEQA perspective. And that offers us a benefit, which I'll spend some time talking about, of helping to streamline future projects that are being evaluated under those VMT requirements. So the background that you've seen before, I think, and will probably be familiar, Senate Bill 743, or SB 743, became effective back in July of 2020. The effect of that was to change the way that we look at traffic impacts under CEQA from looking at level of service to VMT, or vehicle miles traveled. So basically what that did is it changed the way that we look at traffic impacts from looking at congestion and delay to now we look at how many vehicle miles traveled a project generates. We dealt with this a few times previously. You'll recall all the way back in March of 2020, the city contracted with Kittleson and Associates to prepare VMT implementation guidelines. Secondly, the city, a few months later, came back and adopted interim transportation impact analysis guidelines. And finally, in April of 2021, the city initiated amendments to the circulation element and authorized the preparation of a supplemental EIR. So all of those items are under consideration this evening. The general plan amendment themselves, or itself, proposes to amend the circulation element to include VMT-related goals and policies. There's a specific policy that would specify that projects comply with the city's TIA guidelines, including those VMT requirements, and provide appropriate VMT mitigation. And then there's some general policy language that promotes carpooling, exploring the feasibility of a VMT mitigation fee, and partnering with various stakeholders on VMT issues, as well as encouraging improved connectivity through alternate modes of transportation. So these really are just the basic building blocks of general plan policies addressing VMT. Now to those TIA guidelines. We have TIA guidelines to inform the development industry and traffic engineering groups on how to prepare analysis of traffic impacts in the city of Clovis. So we've always had these we've always had these guidelines. We're just transitioning strictly from looking at levels of service to now incorporating VMT provisions as well. The guidelines I would describe as including now 4 major points or purposes. The first of which is to include criteria for screening out projects from VMT analysis. What that means is if you screen out, you don't have to look at VMT anymore. You don't have to do any more technical analysis. You don't have to mitigate VMT. So if you're in one of these 5 categories, you are, good to go, let's just say, under VMT. These categories are defined in the guidelines themselves and described briefly in the staff report, so I'm not going to elaborate on them more. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The second thing the guidelines do is to establish thresholds for VMT impacts. Thresholds allow us to determine when a VMT impact becomes significant. So using the residential category as a criteria, or as an example, the residential category, an impact is significant if it does not achieve a VMT of at least 13% below existing VMT per capita. So regionally, the VMT per capita is about 16 miles, and the 13% reduction would take it to a little over 14, I think it's 14.1 or thereabouts. So if a project coming in does not achieve a VMT of at least 14, then that impact of the project is considered significant. There are similar categories for office, which looks at, instead of per capita, it looks at employee. Retail is done a little differently. It looks at an overall increase of VMT in the region. And then there's a possibility that there would be even other projects looked at on a case-by-case basis as they are proposed and the setting is analyzed. The third thing that the guidelines do is to provide a framework for VMT mitigation. So we don't have a limited number or a specific number of mitigation measures. Rather, these guidelines establish that VMT mitigation needs to change the behaviors primarily of people to drive less and to preferably either walk more, ride their bike, or live in areas where there's a mix of uses so that they're not relying so much on their individual vehicles. And then the fourth and final thing that these guidelines do, at least as I would describe them, is that we continue to have provisions for, call it the old way of looking at things, the local transportation analysis that looks at congestion and delay. The trick is that we don't look at that as a CEQA impact any longer, so we don't consider it as part of environmental analysis or as part of an EIR, but we do look at it to make sure that our policies for roadway capacity are achieved, because we still want to make sure that our road system works, even if we can't look at impacts in that way through an environmental lens. So the supplemental EIR. The supplemental EIR evaluates the proposed general plan amendment and those TA guidelines. When we talk about it being a supplement, this is a supplement to the 2014 general plan EIR. We have a consulting team that helped us out with this, and they helped put together the document, and we sent it out for review between the end of June and the middle of August of this year. During that time, we also held a public Q&A meeting in July, attended mostly by the development community. At the end of that process, we received 2 comment letters, one from Caltrans and the other from Flood Control. They weren't what I would call heavy lifting comment letters, weren't really offering substantive comments on our project. Both the comment letters and the responses are, though, included in our final EIR that's included in your package. The EIR determines that VMT-related impacts that are associated with the implementation of the general plan would be potentially significant. And the EIR also identifies mitigation measures to potentially reduce those VMT impacts. But at the end of the analysis, the VMT impacts were determined to remain significant and unavoidable, even with the mitigation measures in place. For that reason, the approval of the project, which again is the general plan amendment and those TAA guidelines, requires the adoption of a statement of overriding considerations. Basically what that means is it's a determination by the council that the benefit of the project outweigh its environmental effects. When we started this process, the likelihood of there being significant and unavoidable impacts was anticipated. And in fact, that was really the point of going through this process. And that's because the preparation and certification of the EIR and the adoption of the overriding considerations will help to streamline future project reviews. I've laid out in 3 quick steps what future analysis will look like, we think. So first, when future projects come in, let's say it's a 100-lot subdivision, it'll come in and we'll look at it and evaluate it to determine if it screens out of analysis. If it screens out, it's great, it's done, it doesn't have to do any more. If it doesn't screen out, it'll do a project-specific VMT analysis, and if it requires it, mitigation measures would be applied. And then after that process is completed, if the impacts of that project will still be significant and unavoidable, the project can tear off of this supplemental EIR and avoid the need of having to prepare a project-specific environmental impact report. So it doesn't alleviate the certification of this EIR, doesn't eliminate a future project's requirement to deal with VMT. What we believe is that many projects will be able to lean on or rely on this EIR in order to avoid having to prepare a lengthy environmental impact report that has threatened, well, not only has threatened, but is slowing down projects or creating enough uncertainty in terms of timeline that developers are reluctant to proceed. The Planning Commission considered all three of these components at its September 22nd meeting. During that discussion, there were no public comments offered, and there were no substantive questions or discussion by the Planning Commission. At the end of the discussion, the Commission voted 4-0 to recommend approval, with Commissioner Bedstead being absent. Based on that information, staff is recommending the resolution certifying the supplemental EIR with the findings, the adoption of a statement of overriding considerations, and a mitigation monitoring and reporting program, as well as the adoption of a resolution approving policy changes to the circulation element, and finally, a resolution approving updated traffic impact analysis guidelines. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Questions? Well, so Dave, this is the sort of the report of what we approved about a year ago, huh, with regards to going out to get that supplemental EIR, only on the traffic analysis.
That's absolutely
of our
correct.
original EIR, and then these are the findings, and it made a couple changes, I guess, to the TIA and the policies. It also, I saw in there, we changed policies with the traffic element because of that study, the supplemental EIR, correct? I saw that there were a lot of red line changes to some of the circulation element goals and policies.
Right. The recommendation from staff back last year in 2021 was to amend the circulation element to incorporate VMT policies, goals and policies, and then those changes became part of the project that was evaluated in the EIR. So the EIR came from the policies instead of the policies coming from the EIR, if that makes sense.
Okay. On Goal 8, which is the newest, I guess the newest policy with regards to VMT, it's page 101, is it page 101?
Okay.
It has bicycle lanes. Are trails something that cannot be included in reduction of VMT? And so why, if not, maybe that's why it's not here, but if it is, or if it can be, why isn't walking and or trails be a potential, I guess, one of the, to help with VMT? Because I see bike lanes, and so
yeah,
I was wondering.
I don't remember specifically why we included bike lanes in that policy. There are multiple references currently in the circulation element regarding trails. So I believe we currently have sufficient policy language in the general plan regarding the trails. We just didn't include it under goal 8.
So would it though? I mean, I read Goal 8 as sort of reducing VMT, and so should it be included so that way, if a development has walking trails more so than just bicycle lanes in which people can, maybe they work right there at the corner of a commercial center next to the, kind of like in Loma Vista where there's walking distances potentially. Can that be considered, or is that just something we cannot credit for, show that there's mitigation because of the walking trails?
Yeah, I believe that any feature which enhances walkability and reduces vehicle miles traveled is a positive component under the VMT analysis. So I think we could include language under Goal 8 or under the policies.
Yeah, I can even see going under 8.4 where it says connectivity between residential and commercial, or either that or just expand goal policy 8.3 to add. Because I think the fact that we have such a great trail system should be an asset and or something we can count towards VMT. That's what I'm trying to show. So that way, that work is just for naught, but really can be a benefit, especially how we planned the Southeast, where we actually intentionally made it very walkable. And so that should account for something, even though some of those, I don't think they're considered bicycle lanes, the trails itself. And then currently with our FID agreement, it'll create something new as well for us to benefit, where a development potentially can benefit from that trail system.
Yeah.
Just a thought.
I think we can include in policy 8.4 a specific reference to multi-purpose trails. Yeah.
And then for the statement of overriding considerations, that's sort of like a mitigated negative deck, I'm assuming, similar to that, where...
So a statement of overriding considerations comes in when the analysis determines that impacts associated with a project are significant and unavoidable. So whenever impacts are identified in an environmental analysis, we're required to apply mitigation measures. And most of the time, those mitigation measures reduce impacts so that they're not significant any longer. But if they remain significant even after mitigation, then they're called significant and unavoidable. And if we want to approve a project with those significant and unavoidable impacts, then the council will need to consider the statement of overriding considerations.
And I'm assuming those 4 items on page 91, are those the only overriding considerations that a project would have, that we as a council can vote upon to show that then it's overriding?
The items on page 91 were the items that were identified, or the benefits that were identified during the analysis. If additional benefits are identified by the council, you could certainly incorporate them into your motion.
Okay, so an applicant can also bring something before us to show us that council here's another benefit, even though there's a potential cost to VMT.
Well, in this case, what we're doing is we're making a one-time finding in conjunction with the certification of this EIR and the adoption of this project, and we're saying that there are benefits of adopting the general plan amendment and the TIA guidelines that outweigh the environmental effects of doing so. So we're making a one-time finding based on those benefits that are identified today.
Okay. I think I was lost in my analysis, and now I understand you, because that's for the current GPA, and this is the overriding considerations that we would agree to approve the GPA that's before us.
Correct.
Okay. All right. And then on the TIA, and then there's sort of the process. That analysis then is done at the staff level, and then the mitigation factors will then be presented, and it'll come before us at that time, meaning the council, to approve and or change, or are they sort of concrete in that, hey, if we find these things, these are the mitigation factors, and council will not be able to take away, let's say that we find 4 mitigation factors, we can't take out 2 and 3 just because we felt like it. Is it more concrete, or is it something in which there is flexibility for the council if and when projects come forward and mitigation factors are identified?
So VMT mitigation will be like other environmental mitigation. So if impacts are identified, we need to do our best to apply feasible mitigation. So we identify those 4 mitigation measures and we include them in the document, and they come ultimately to the city council as part of a council project or a council project considered by the council. You can change those measures, but you would need to change them as replacement measures, if you will, which is possible. But they need to have an equivalent mitigating factor or function to them. We wouldn't be able to just pull measures or remove them because then we're left with a shortfall, I guess, on mitigation.
And those mitigation factors would have already been reviewed by an applicant.
Yes.
And can they still challenge those, or are those pretty much, if it is found, those are the mitigation factors and they would have to mitigate according to what is found?
Typically, by the time we've completed an analysis and brought a project forward for consideration, there's a pretty well accepted package of mitigation measures. There may be a situation where a challenge could occur. I don't think I've seen it. I would ask maybe Mr. Wolf in his experience whether he's seen that or know how that would work.
The only thing I can think of is an incorrect application of mitigation measures. That might be raised. But really the time to challenge those mitigation measures is now, when the council is approving the general plan amendment and the EIR. But it's possible there could be a misapplication, and that could be raised by the developer.
My last question is, it talks in here about the measures focusing on behavioral changes. And I think that's the intent of the state, correct? For us to create these rules so that it would change the behavior of development in cities with regards to distances traveled. And that's what we're creating these rules, to try to create a mindset of building closer to transit corridors, to commercial areas. And that's why that language is placed here, I'm assuming.
Yeah, there are some broader mitigation strategies. I'm not sure broader is the right term, but strategies that would, for instance, create a mix of uses in closer proximity to one another, so that by design, people are closer to their working environment, or they're closer to their shopping environment, or their schools or whatnot, so that when they travel, their commute length or their trip distance is just shorter than it would have been otherwise. So there are some mitigation types or mitigation strategies that aren't strictly behavioral in their nature, but in general, the transition to looking at VMT is very much oriented around having people drive less, whether that's by physical design or by behavioral design. That's the way to reduce VMT is for people to drive less.
And I guess I'll give one last comment with regards to it being transportation corridors, and hopefully that challenges us to rethink our transit to make it where it fits under this model, to show that we may not be facts, but our transit also falls within the definitions of transit that would relieve or mitigate VMT.
Right.
And how we plan our neighborhoods, our communities moving forward. And I think that's a challenge for us as a city, how we rethink transportation. So, thank you.
Dave, excellent report. Thank you. I'm looking at page 59, small projects that can be screened out. Is that single family, fourplex? What would constitute a small project?
Yeah, so the size of the project under that screening criteria is anything that would generate less than 500 trips. So okay. I think that's around 50 single-family units, or I don't remember the specifics, 68 multifamily units, something like that.
So this is kind of why we're seeing the development community bringing in smaller projects so that they don't have to deal with that.
Correct.
Okay. The high-quality transit area, would that, for us, that would be Shaw Avenue from the city limits to probably Sunnyside, and Willow from the city limits to alluvial knees? Would that be the only thing that would be high-quality transit area for us right now?
The only high-quality transit area, and we have it, we do have it mapped, but I probably won't be able to find it quickly. It's a very, very small area based on
facts, right?
A facts route. It's shown on page 141 of your packet.
If I go to 141, I won't be able to get back to where I'm at, but okay.
It's along the Shaw Avenue corridor, basically from the limits, city limits to Peach Avenue.
Great.
It's a very small area.
And just on with the criteria for vehicle miles traveled per capita in Fresno County, with a county as large as ours, as long as it is, so are we comparing ourselves to people who are commuting from Reedley and Firebaugh coming to Fresno? I mean, that's got to help us because they're skewed, I would imagine, but how do they factor that in with a county our size?
It's all done with the countywide traffic model, and we did look at alternate ways to calculate that, including looking at just the city versus the county. We do have our representative here from Kittleson, and if you want a more thoughtful or complete response to that question, Kittleson would be happy to answer it.
I guess my observation, just from a 10,000-foot view, is this has to be killing the small towns that are further out, because how are they going to develop with these rules? And I don't need an answer for that question. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Actually, if I could have the representative from Kittleson come up to the microphone. Thank you. So the concept here is, I think we had a 2014 general plan that has been adopted by us. We have put together an environmental impact report associated with it in order to make sure that we were in compliance with CEQA at the time that we approved the general plan from 2014. The rules changed with the adoption of this VMT perspective as opposed to level of service. And rather than having to do a full new general plan, we have been able to do a supplemental EIR that focuses on our general plan. And the concept that I find most intriguing to me is the idea of having these new developments in the city of Clovis lean on kind of the supplemental EIR. And because generally when I think of an EIR, it's very specific to a project, like it was specific to the 2014 general plan, and sometimes we've had some projects which have been so impactful that we've had them conduct an EIR as well. They don't qualify for a negative mitigated declaration. So you, from the Kittleson group, have come highly recommended because I think you were kind of on the in the forefront of dealing with some of those VMT issues. And I'm curious as to whether this particular approach has been tried in other municipalities, kind of leaning on the supplemental EIR as it relates to VMT. If there's been any challenges with the idea of having it be just a supplemental EIR that other future projects can rely on, even though we can't identify what those future projects necessarily are going to be.
Yeah, actually, well, a couple things. First of all, the person who really brainstormed this idea is Steve McMurtry of De Novo Planning Group, who is our teammate on this. I believe he's on the line.
Okay.
And could speak more. I mean, the practice of tiering off environmental impact reports that have significant impacts is longstanding. This particular one, Clovis is actually as far as we know, is at the forefront of this, and there's actually a lot of cities looking to Clovis right now to see and are interested in this approach. So I think it's yet to be, to our knowledge, it's yet to be tested legally, but there's certainly a long precedent. I don't know, Steve, if you can speak to the practice of tiering and how that's an established practice.
Hi there, this is Steve Martin. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'll just speak real briefly to there's several different types of EIRs really at play here. Every general plan that's prepared for every community within the state is prepared at a programmatic level. And so it's truly that 20,000-foot view of impacts that would occur within the entire region based on really the base of the land use plans, all those designations for each individual parcel within the city. As a city starts to develop, there are some complications, and there's often general plan amendments to try to change land uses and make it fit a master plan or some type of development. And when that project comes forward, it's done in a project level EIR. So it's much more specific to the details of that particular site and all the circumstances surrounding that site. What we're really trying to do here is take your programmatic EIR, which covers the entirety of the city, and make a small amendment. It's a very focused amendment. If you look at the supplement, it narrowly looks at traffic. It does not look at land uses and a variety of other topics that are covered under a programmatic EIR, because the amendment to your general plan doesn't do anything to those sections of the EIR. It does not change any of the land uses. It doesn't change public services or infrastructure other than transportation and circulation related types of topics. So what this really means is that projects that come in that don't fit that small project screening criteria, it might be above 50 lots, maybe less than 100 lots, but and I'm using a hypothetical here. If it's completely aligned with your general plan, let's say it's residential, the developer comes in with a residential project, the intent is that the developer gets to do or gets to apply what you've directed them to do through your general plan. So your general plan is an instruction to them on how to develop their property, and they're coming in with an application that's in alignment with that. The intent is not to have them have to spend a lot of money doing an environmental analysis again, because you've already prepared one, a general plan EIR that provides some analysis there. And it provides that CEQA umbrella coverage under the program EIR with a statement of overriding considerations for that program level EIR. And then what they end up doing is they prepare a mitigated negative declaration, which is a little bit more focused on the project. And there's a variety of mitigation measures that are specific to the project, but they still have to comply with all the mitigation measures for your general plan and the policies within the general plan. And they move forward with the project as a mitigated neg deck tiered to your general plan. And so that would be the ideal situation for a project, assuming that it is consistent with your general plan. Things will change if a developer comes in with a project that, let's say your general plan has it designated for commercial uses, and they come in and they want to change it to residential uses. If that's the case, they are asking you for a general plan amendment, and your CEQA coverage under your program EIR does not cover that scenario because that's not what was analyzed under your general plan and under your supplement. So that's a little bit of a background there. A supplement to an EIR is a type of EIR that's intended to be prepared after an EIR has been certified, but there have been some changes that weren't known at the time that the previous EIR was approved. And the idea is to reconcile all of the facts and to present those again to the City Council for their consideration of all of those facts and the changes in circumstances. There's a couple other types of EIRs. If it's a little bit more expanded, you can prepare a subsequent EIR, which is a more exhaustive process. This was just really a narrowly focused analysis of transportation and circulation, and the supplement is the appropriate avenue to achieve that reconciliation of all of the facts for you to consider.
So, Steve, this is Bob Whalen again. I guess really what I'm trying to identify is the risk associated with us taking this particular type of approach. It certainly makes sense to me from, from a timeliness perspective and probably a cost savings perspective. But it sounds to me as though, I guess the concept of tiering off of a supplemental EIR is, has been used in the past as it relates to this particular transition from level of service to E to the VMT. That's something that has not yet been tested, it sounds like. And so I guess I'm wondering about the risk from your perspective of us at some point having developers come in, they want to do a project, then they challenge that project. It sounds as though if we and we are reviewing this, we have the opportunity for public input tonight. This is the opportunity for people to say, no, we don't like this idea, this concept of being able to tier off of the supplemental EIR. Is this kind of it's done after tonight, or can we expect challenges in the future to what we're doing tonight, even though people have not commented on it? No significant comments have been received as of tonight.
So there is risk with any CEQA approval. There is risk. There is a statute of limitations built into it, though. So people do have an opportunity, a right under statute to file a lawsuit within 30 days of the approval. Once that 30 days expires, if they haven't not filed a lawsuit, then they no longer have an opportunity to file a lawsuit on this particular discretionary approval. There are certain requirements of people to, it's called exhausting your administrative remedies. They are supposed to be involved. They've had an opportunity through the public process to establish any concerns, any issues, any controversies that the city should consider. And through the public process, we've had a scoping meeting, a notice of preparation, another public workshop with the development groups. We've tried to reach out and get an understanding of any controversies and anything that should be considered and any changes that we should focus on. And we just have not heard any of that. So I think the risk, it's present until that 30 days expires, but it does not seem like a high level risk based on the input that we've received from the public thus far.
Okay. It answered my question. It sounds like the risk is significantly reduced after 30 days, and we'll just have to wait for that 30 days. Thank you, Steve.
No problem.
Okay. Gets on next. So this whole law, SB 743, the object is to reduce green gas emissions and do everything we can, and that's why we came up with these new standards with the VMTs and these mitigation efforts. So the type of vehicles we use, is that taken into account when developing mitigation efforts? For instance, the governor's announced that starting in 2035, no more gas vehicles in California, only electric vehicles. So will the standards change if that ever comes to fruition? And what happens today? do we get to count as a mitigating effort if we use, if we start introducing EV infrastructure as a mitigating factor to reduce VMTs?
So far, EV strategies are not part of the mix. So we have heard questions about EV or solar, alternative energy. And at this point, that doesn't seem to be a benefit.
So it's all about walking, transit, bicycling, trails, those kinds of things.
Yeah, it looks like Mike might have a comment on that, so.
Well, and as Mr. Merchant also mentioned, the mix of land uses, which actually in Clovis, that's one of the more powerful tools you have, is what the analysis for this general plan amendment showed, is your proposed mix of land uses in your future, some of your future planning areas. But the state very consciously, even though their goal is to reduce greenhouse gas, like you said, one part of that is how much people drive, and the other part is what kind of cars they drive, and they consciously said, no, you're reducing VMT, which means the amount of driving, so they very consciously made it so you have to reduce the amount of driving and the distance of driving to meet these goals. There are other sections of environmental analysis for projects related to air quality, separate of like particle emissions and things like that, and those you can mitigate with electric vehicle programs. So there's other things besides transportation that projects will still be encouraged to do to mitigate their air quality impacts, but as far as their impacts, greenhouse gas emissions from driving, electric vehicles don't get to count for that, and the state very consciously made that rule.
Okay, even though that's what it's for, green gas emissions.
Well, all types, I mean, electric vehicles help with a variety of emissions. Greenhouse gas is one type of emissions. The others are just like particles coming out of, diesel and things like that. There's all kinds of air quality things that electric vehicles can help with.
Okay, any more questions?
Do we know ballpark how much it will cost a potential unit, a single family additional at all to be built in the city of Clovis? So if an average home is $300,000 with VMT, after we pass all this, development comes in over 50 units and VMT is put on it, how much more it would cost? Do we know that?
We don't yet. And I mean, the most thorough answer, which I don't know that you want the most thorough answer, you might get a different answer from everybody that you ask. We don't have information on cost yet, and that has been one of the difficulties of VMT mitigation in particular. We know at this point how to analyze the impacts, but in terms of calculating mitigation and applying mitigation, that's still probably the most difficult part of the VMT process. The other complexity, and I didn't want to necessarily lean on it because it's just a portion of the answer, is that some projects in some areas have to mitigate just a little tiny bit, and other projects in other areas may have to mitigate to the full extent of feasibility, and they still may not be able to get to the finish line of being able to reduce their impacts to less than significant. So part of what we also need to do is look at that feasibility issue. CEQA doesn't say that you have to mitigate every impact until it's less than significant. It says you have to apply feasible mitigation measures. So it's a long way of saying we don't know cost yet. We would like to eventually look, as many cities are, at a fee program. That's something that's referenced in these policies. That's something that other cities are looking at. There just isn't yet a good model for us to look at and say, well, this kind of fee program, would be defensible and would have the effect that we're looking for. And ultimately, that's desirable because it allows the predictability that I think you're maybe looking for.
Because the impacts are very location specific, so it's been hard to come up with say that a 200 unit subdivision is going to have to pay this much because it depends where it is in the city. And to the question about, comparing to rural areas, I mean, this does make it very difficult for rural areas, and then depending on the size of the town, because we're actually doing this work for Fowler right now also, and Fowler, similar to parts of Clovis, once they build a lot of mix of uses, they actually can come down under, even though in current conditions, a lot of people have to drive a long way up to Fresno. But if they actually get, the employment opportunities that they're hoping for within their town, they actually can get those shorter trips and actually come down under the limit in some places. So it's very dependent on what other development is going on. It's very dependent on the location in the city. So it's been very difficult for people to say this one size fits all. Here's how much it costs to mitigate a 200-unit subdivision.
But there will be added costs is sort of the end goal or end result of this.
I think it's very likely that projects requiring mitigation will have additional costs.
And it sort of defeats the purpose of trying to help with affordable development, because we, meaning the state and us now, are creating more costs, and yet they're requiring us to build affordable units. And I think it was one of them that was exempt, I thought, right? That falls out of it, but
affordable housing projects get some relief, but in terms of making projects less expensive, it certainly doesn't make projects less expensive.
And without knowing sort of a potential cost, do you foresee larger projects coming in now that if this gets approved tonight, Dave, or because of the it's unsure of the actual mitigation costs, that no one's going to be that first project yet?
Well, I think, yes, to both maybe of those questions, even though they're not, it wasn't really, you didn't ask it that way. But yes, I do expect that we'll see some projects now that we have this tool to rely on. But yes, I do think there's yet going to be a reluctance because of the unknowns on mitigation. I think the back corner of the room there, you see some traffic VMT consulting folks there that are waiting to see how this turns out. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Well, I appreciate the fact that Ricky and now you taking over have led us to this spot. So, yeah, thank you for the great work.
No more questions? I'll open it up to the public. Anyone here in the public wishing to comment or ask questions regarding this item? No one? What about the web?
None.
No one on the web. Okay, so we'll bring it back to the council. We have several. Okay, we have 3 resolutions to consider.
I'll make a motion to certify a supplemental environmental impact report.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. So it's 4 ayes, no noes, and an absent.
And I'll make a motion to amend for GPA 2022-003, request to amend the 2014 general plan to incorporate policy changes to the circulation element.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it's 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent.
And I'll make a motion to adopt the updated transportation impact analysis guidelines.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So it's 4 ayes, no noes, and 1 absent.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Sure.
So I just want to thank those who participated in putting this together for us. It required some creative thinking. Usually when you're kind of the first one out of the chute, or sort of close to being the first one out of the chute, you have to think through a lot of potential issues that may come forward. You have advised well the council based on the reports that you have presented to us, and I think the council has responded appropriately with the questions indicating that we really think this was the appropriate course of action for the city of Clovis. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave. Next item, item number 10, consider approval of implementation of Clovis Transit Program to carry Narcan on transit vehicles. Staff member will be our General Service Manager, Amy Hans.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. I'm here tonight, every time. Okay, here we go, one more time. I'm here tonight to talk to you about a new program that Clovis Transit staff is proposing. In response to the opioid epidemic and as a partner with other health agencies, we've developed a program to carry naloxone, commonly known by its commercial name, Narcan, on Clovis Transit vehicles. Before I start with my presentation, though, I do need to acknowledge some people who have provided me with extensive technical assistance in developing this project. The Fresno County Department of Public Health has been instrumental in supporting me with data and my probably over 100 questions about what a program like this would look like for us. Specifically, I want to thank Dan Lynch, who's the EMS director, along with EMS specialist Sal Rodriguez, who is their absolute data guru, and staff analyst James Sponsler. I also want to thank the Clovis Fire Department and Paul Macias for their assistance in helping us develop a training for our transit staff, and my Clovis Transit Management staff, who's here with me today for their patience with one of my crazy ideas that we're going to see if we can make go. You can go ahead with the first slide. As I'm sure everyone here tonight is aware, the flow of opioids into the United States is at an unprecedented level. These drugs have reached Fresno County, and law enforcement agencies are working together to reduce the amount of opioids on the streets. There's some data on this slide that shocked me when I realized what has happened in Fresno County. But Fresno County has had an 81% increase in overdose deaths in just the past 2 years. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. Fentanyl is front and center of this issue due to its prevalence in overdoses. I'm sorry to say that I know more about illicitly manufactured fentanyl than I've ever wanted to know, but I'm glad I know it. Fentanyl is manufactured in illicit manufacturing facilities in China, and then it's brought over to Mexico, and then it makes its way into the United States. It's odorless, tasteless, and it can be too small to see. The biggest danger for fentanyl is that it's quite often added to other illicit drugs, and the user does not know it's in there. Or if they know it's in there and they're looking for a very intentional high, they're unaware of what concentration it may be. So it might be a lower concentration of fentanyl that may not cause them any problems, but the next time they do the particular drug, it may be a much higher concentration of fentanyl, and it could be deadly to them. And the most important part of this slide, I think, is that unintentional overdose of fentanyl can really happen to anyone. It's a danger that we're facing right now. The role of naloxone or Narcan in the opioid crisis is an important one. Part of the public health response, in fact, one of the primary tenets of the public health response to the opioid crisis is the easy access to Narcan or naloxone. Readily available Narcan is the key for survival, and Narcan can reverse an opioid overdose within 2 to 3 minutes. And the slide includes a chart that was taken from data that was gleaned by American Ambulance through Fresno County EMS. And in March of this year, they started noticing that there was a lot more bystander administration of Narcan, so they started tracking it through their computer system, which was pretty slick. In March, April, and May, and part of June, they were only looking for how many times bystanders administered Narcan to people that, for a variety of reasons, had become unconscious. But by the middle of June, they realized they also needed to start tracking what was the outcome of the patient by the time that the paramedics arrived on scene. So that's the red bar that you see. So you can see in June, July, August, and September, Narcan was given many times by people in Fresno County prior to arrival of the paramedics. And in many of those cases, sometimes in more than half, far more than half, there was a positive response with that Narcan administration. And this was Narcan that was administered either by a police department personnel, fire department personnel, or simply just a bystander who happened to have Narcan there with them. I think October is going to be a record year for them. The data that they pulled ended October 10th, but they've already logged as many administrations of Narcan in October than they did for the entire month of September. So that was really important when we were looking at this project. We wanted to make sure that there was data that showed us that there was a real need for this particular program. Next. Okay. So public transit is a community partner. Public transit isn't necessarily used for this type of service, but on an average day, Clovis Transit has between 22 and 25 vehicles in service, and we go all over the city of Clovis and into large parts of Fresno. You can see by the map there. And transit vehicles who are carrying Narcan could be part of a strategy that's being promoted right now the program's called Be the One Before 911. And this program is essentially encouraging bystanders or people who know others who are suffering through an opioid addiction to be the one person that has Narcan with them and be able to administer that at the same time they're calling 911. Narcan could be the bridge that allows someone to survive until the paramedics arrive on scene and can provide further treatment. Next up. Okay, so when we were developing this plan, nobody else is really doing this plan. There's some agencies on the East Coast. I've been in pretty frequent contact with a colleague who works at St. Louis, Missouri, their public safety department, and he's doing the same thing we are. He's about 6 months ahead of us. He got Narcan out with his fire department. He then put it with his police department, and he's now putting it on his public transit vehicles. Like I said, they're about 6 months ahead of us, and I just talked with him today to let him know I was coming here tonight to talk with you, and he wanted to be sure that I let you know that it won't be if we use the Narcan that's on a bus, but it'll just be when. In the first 3 months that they had Narcan on their buses, they used it 3 times. So that's a sad statistic to report, but that's the reality of it. So we're creating this plan to put Narcan out on our city buses. What I've done so far is the first thing I did, of course, was to call our city attorney's office and make sure that we had the legal capacity to do something like this. And the good news is we do, as long as our drivers are trained, and they will be undergoing intensive training. It was interesting to find out in order to carry Narcan as a bystander, you really only have to watch an 11-minute video. But we're going to do a lot better than that. Our fire department is working right now to create a 1-hour training that they'll be supplying to our drivers. Administration of Narcan is just an additional step to they're already trained in CPR, first aid, and AED. So we're all good to go under the legal part of it. I've been talking with other transit agencies. We've already applied for a standing order through the CDPH naloxone program. We're working with our employee representative groups. We just had a meeting with them today, letting them know what we're planning and what's happening with this program. And we've draft updated our policy that incorporates Narcan into our emergency response. So we're waiting for a couple of other things to happen. First of all, we're waiting to receive our Narcan from the state. They're backlogged. I'm sure that's no surprise to anybody. They're just have a lot to do and a little bit slow. We're going to be developing our training program for our staff. We're going to launch a public information campaign, and then we're going to have Narcan on our buses with your approval tonight. And this is our wonderful staff. I never miss an opportunity to brag on our transit staff. They are pretty special and important people. As I told them today in our meeting, if I didn't trust you to be able to do this program, I wouldn't even talk to anybody about it. They are incredibly capable, highly technical professionals at what they do, and I have all the confidence in the world we're going to be able to do this program. Do you have any questions for me?
Questions for me, Drew?
Yeah. This is an excellent idea. When I was the airport chief of police, one of my captains approached us and wanted to know if we could participate in the program. I gave him the green light. We got the Narcan issued to us, and within 2 days of it being issued, the captain who had come up with the plan administered Narcan to a 17-year-old girl who was on December 23rd at about 11 o'clock at night. Her and her family were flying back to Chicago, and she went down in the terminal. Unresponsive, no heartbeat, nothing. He administered the Narcan. She woke up right then. And she had taken some type of illicit substance, but if she had gotten on that plane and had been in the air, she would have been dead, because it would have taken, it takes an aircraft at altitude about 20 minutes to get to the nearest airport. She would have been dead. And if you look at the fentanyl scourge that we're dealing with, they're making it look like Pez. They make it colored. And with the number of kids that we have riding Clovis Transit going back and forth to school, this is really important. I'm assuming we're going to, after we do our program, we're going to put something on the bus saying we have Narcan, so that if somebody waves somebody down, hey, so we're going to do that?
We will be developing a sign on all the vehicles that say opioid kit or Narcan kit on board.
Excellent.
And I should also explain that we are expecting our drivers to intervene if someone becomes unconscious, just like they would normally do now. Like I said, they are all CPR, first aid, and AED certified. But we also know that a lot of our roundup buses are in parking lots, they're in doctor's offices, they're at the hospitals, they're moving around in these areas, and they'll park waiting for their next pickup. And if someone is in the area who's experiencing an overdose and is trying to help out a friend or a coworker or whoever that may be in a vehicle next to them, they'll be able to just tap on the glass and we'll just give them our kit.
I agree with your assessment of your staff. They do excellent work. I completely trust them to step in and save somebody's life. This is a win-win. Thank you.
I agree with Councilmember Bessinger. I just had a question with regards to sort of the longevity of this. Will we continue, because it says that we already have funds, but if we say we use the 40 pouches, is this something where now we will have to go pay for, or does that program sort of keep going and there's 2 times, 3 times getting that $400 for the other pouches?
Okay, so the pouches themselves, and Carrie, if you could go back one slide. So that's the pouch we're going to be purchasing. That's the expense, the $400 for the 40 pouches. The medication itself is free through the state of California's naloxone distribution program. So once we, and I hope we don't go through all of our Narcan, but once we go through our Narcan, we can apply and get another shipment.
Okay.
But if we were to give away all of our pouches, I think we have a bigger problem than another $400 for pouches.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I do think it's a great program, a great concept. I do caution everybody, because sometimes when no good deed goes unpunished is my motto. And so check with your friend back east, because once the bad guys find out that you're carrying Narcan, they might want to steal it from you. And so there must be a policy or training for all of them so they can be safe. That if someone wants the Narcan, just give it to them. because, it's nothing, you know, the criminal element know that, it's a savior. They know what Narcan can do, and so they want to have it too. So if anyone gets confronted and there's, you know, they're getting robbed for their Narcan, just give it to them. So we got to make sure that our bus drivers know that. And so the roundup will also have them run the roundup drivers, and so they won't be dispatched because they're everywhere. They won't be dispatched to a crisis or.
Oh, no.
No, it just happenstance. Where if it's in front of them, then they'll address the issue.
Exactly. If something happens on their vehicle, they'll be able to respond with.
Or nearby, or if it's like the parking lot.
Or nearby, right.
Yeah.
And I don't expect them to, I was telling them today, I don't expect you to hop off the bus and save everybody who's fallen over on the sidewalk. I do expect you to call it in. I do expect you to pull over and follow our normal procedures. But it's really for, it's really for our school kids on our bus. I saw the article a couple months ago that Clovis Unified, Fresno Unified, and Central Unified all have Narcan on their campuses. And over 50% of our riders are middle school, high school, and college age passengers. And that's the prime group that could have an unintentional fentanyl overdose. They
keep calling it an overdose, but a lot of people are starting to call it a poisoning because a lot of people, they're not doing it on purpose. It's just way too much for anyone to ingest, and they die because of it. So they're not doing it intentionally like an overdose. It's just poisoning. So they're killing our kids. So.
And I have to tell you, this reminds me so much. I don't know who in the room remembers when we were rolling out AEDs. And that, at the beginning, was very unusual to have an automatic defibrillator anywhere. It was a novel idea, but now you go everywhere. There's one right here. It's nothing unusual, and this seems very familiar to me, that how AEDs rolled out at the beginning, people were a little afraid, they were a little apprehensive, they weren't sure. I think Narcan is following the same trend, and that before long, it's going to be very usual to not only have an AED like we have here, but we'll also have an opioid emergency kit right above it.
Sure. And this is a kind of a statement for anybody who's listening or people here. I mean, I have friends whose children, 20, 25, woke up dead. They died over at college, they died at home, and it was Narcan, it was fentanyl. And when I have a captive audience of teenagers, I had 2 young men at my house working this weekend. I always take the opportunity to take 5 minutes and talk to them about fentanyl, because there were kids that were taking Ritalin for ADD and different drugs, and people get, hey, can I have some of your Ritalin? Well, unfortunately now those Ritalin tablets are false. They're fentanyl, and so what you were used to is going to kill you. And so I would have conversations with young men and young women, and it's a good 5-minute conversation to have with somebody to say, when in the 80s it was just say no, it's almost like don't be a fool and take something that you don't know what it is, because you have people who are they're gambling on the fact that you're going to take their drugs, and they don't care about what happens to you. So it's a great conversation to have. I've had the same conversation with a couple of people more than once, and they kind of roll their eyes, but they understand where it's coming from. So this is a parent, grandparent, and uncle conversation, and whenever you have a captive audience of kids, you need to have that conversation. Thank you.
Of course. Anyone in the audience wishing to comment on this item? Anyone on the web?
No.
I'll bring it back.
I'll move that we approve the implementation of the Clovis Transit Program to carry Narcan on transit vehicles. And after the second, I have a comment I'd like to make.
Second. We got a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
It's for ayes and noes. After the motion?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm okay now. It's now good?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Sorry.
Amy, thank you for bringing this up. You have a real big heart, and I know that this is designed, and when we talk about it, for saving some of those kids who may have overdosed. But I can't imagine being a bus driver and having somebody passed out on your bus and not being able to help when we can provide something as simple as this in order to at least give that bus driver hope that they can save a life. So it's also for your bus drivers as well, and I recognize that, and thank you for thinking of them as well.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. And no noes and one absence. Motion.
Now they get two.
No, the package is actually coming to us. Next item is item 11. It's, subject. Consider update hotel parking ratios. Staff member will be our city planner, Dave Merchant.
Hey, Mr. Mayor. There was some interest from Councilmember Wanatua regarding looking at our existing ratios for parking on hotels. We prepared just a very quick report describing what our current ratio is, which is 1.2 parking stalls for each room in a hotel of any type, and additional rooms as necessary for accessory uses like hotels that would be open to the public. We did just a very quick survey of a handful of surrounding cities. We provided that information in the report. There's a bit of a mixed bag in terms of what other local cities provide. Our survey was by no means exhaustive. If I had to pick a prevailing standard out of those we surveyed, it would probably be one stall per room is what looks like it's prevailing, although not everybody adhered to that standard. We, as part of our evaluation, we talked to the city's economic development team about what their experience is with hotel occupancy. Sean Miller reached out to, I'm going to mess up the name unless I read it, but to the Fresno Clovis Convention and Visitors Bureau. And the results of that discussion were included in the form of an email that should have been printed out and provided to you on the dais. Basically, that the communication says the number, the 1.2 stalls, is about right. Clovis shouldn't change its parking standard. Anecdotally, I meant to late Saturday night run around and look at hotel parking lots, but I'm not somebody who can stay awake late at night. But I did get up and a little after 5 on Sunday morning, just did a tour of Shaw and Clovis Avenues to see what I could see. It is really difficult to tell. Some of the parking lots, particularly where there were joint hotels, had lots of open parking stalls, and some on Clovis Avenue felt like they were full or virtually full. So it's hard to tell just based on a quick tour on one day. At this point, if there's interest in the council to looking at that further, we've outlined 2 courses of action. One is you can ask us to bring back an item to initiate an amendment, or you can simply tell us to include it, or we'll take a closer look at it as part of what we sort of call code cleanup amendment, groups of amendments that we bring back once every year and a half or so. We'd be doing that in the next few months anyway. So that's the brief summary we have. We're here to take your feedback and direction as you provide it. The group in the back corner that I previously pointed out as being VMT folks, when I looked closer at them, I told myself those are not VMT folks, those are hotel folks. I went and asked, did they have any intention or any desire to make a comment? And sounds like there's a comment to be had if you're interested in receiving public comments. So I wanted to pass that along.
Thank you. Drew?
I thank you. It was a good report. I did find the comments by Lisa Oliveira in writing from the Visitors Bureau very accurate. We get a lot of CAL FIRE and other large vehicles, especially during the summer, during fire season, and they're going to take up several spaces, obviously. And I've gone past some of our hotels, especially on North Clovis Avenue, and I'd see 6 to 10 fire rigs there. And so having the space for them is important, and I appreciate your comments. That's all I have to say.
Dave, how long has this ordinance been in place? Do you kind of have a rough date?
I can't give you any more information than we described in the report, which is this code has been in place since 2014, and then we compared this to the previous version, and the previous version had the same standard for hotels. So it has been in place for at least more than 10 years, I would guess, but probably much longer. I'm just not sure.
And have we received complaints from other property owners, businesses who are close to hotels with sort of overflow parking? Do you recall any of that?
I don't recall any of that, no.
Okay. And I guess looking at it from a rooms perspective and a TOT perspective, lowering it will equate to more rooms, correct? Because on a given space, whatever the space is, because then we would be able to add however many more rooms per the parking requirement.
I think there probably is a relationship between rooms and parking in terms of how much land area the parking takes. I'm not sure exactly how that, that's if that's a one-to-one relationship or not, but I think there probably is a sizing factor there.
Yeah, the reason why I brought this up is sort of sometimes there's too much parking as in stalls, and yet a developer could have had more rooms, which equates to more revenue for the city. And as we move forward, I also have noticed that there's been changes to how people commute and or stay at hotels, whether it's with Uber, Lyft, and here we get the school events where it'll be a bus load that comes in, so it's not 40 cars, but one bus instead, something like that, in which, I think it will be something good to look at. But like you said, I really would like to see the numbers. I know that in Lisa's email, she had she called some of the hotels, and some of them these guys here own, and so it'd be interesting to see sort of, with Courtyard and Home 2 and all that they're saying they're impacted because once it reaches 75%, there's not enough parking. So I would like to hear from them to see what their response is to that, and if it warrants us looking at it moving forward with regards to also our measure coming. I think it could be a potential win-win-win for everyone involved. Yes, sir.
Okay, at this point, I'll open it to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to comment on this item?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, council members, for giving us time today to speak. We currently own 5 hotels in Fresno, Clovis area, and 15 under our portfolio in Central Valley. So when it comes to hotels, we know what we're talking about. We currently have 2 in Clovis. One recently opened last year on Sunnyside and Shaw, and the second one opened 2 years ago on Helm and Shaw also. We did a quick analysis on our Courtyard Hotel, which is probably the busiest hotel in Fresno, Clovis right now, And on the days that we averaged over 95% occupancy, we still had over 60 stores available for parking. Coming back to that comment that you mentioned about CAL FIRE, we actually, during the fire season, we were housing around 30% of the rooms to CAL FIRE at each of our properties. And when it comes to parking at the Clovis hotels, because the store requirement is 20 foot by 10 foot, they can easily park the fire trucks in a single line. So they're not taking up excessive space. Like you mentioned, I understand where Lisa's coming from, but she's looking as an outsider's perspective, whereas we're looking at it from an operator's perspective. We propose to build a 256 dual brand hotel on Peach and Herndon. If the current parking requirement stands, we will require around 300 stores. And on that 7-acre lot, we won't be able to do anything with the space left over. There's not even enough space to make a pad for a retail store, so it's basically going to waste. And every month we generate around $50,000 to $60,000 in transient occupancy tax that goes towards the city. And if we get the one-for-one parking, which we're here for today, we're looking at around $200,000 occupancy tax every month from that one project that we're looking to build on Herndon and Peach.
I have a question. Have you paid attention when those CAL FIRE engines come in? How many people are inside those engines when they arrive? Do you know? How many firefighters?
Up to teams of 4 or 8 per truck.
So therefore, and how many rooms do you rent to those 8 or 4? But do they get one room each, or do they bunk? So
2 queens, so they'll be pairing up in each room.
So it could be 2 rooms or maybe 4 rooms, depending on
how busy we are, and depending on their preference as well, I guess, at the end of the day.
So for one vehicle, they're taking up a couple of rooms.
Yep.
So it's not a 1-to-1 ratio when it comes to when they show up.
Yeah, but it's the same thing for, we have a partnership with Fresno State Athletics. We're in a 5-year deal with them where teams coming and visiting Fresno, Clovis, they'll come to our hotels, and we've seen that most people, they'll come in one car, but they'll have 4 rooms, and it's a trend. And it's just going to get even, moving on from this point, like, everyone's coming in Ubers, everyone's coming in Lyfts. We have hotel shuttles that operate every day, picking up 10 to 15 flight attendants, crew staff. So we're generally seeing that over our 5 hotels in Fresno, half of the parking lot is always empty. And we're happy to provide an analysis on that with documentation and evidence if required.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Can you give me your name again?
Yeah, it's Randeep.
Randeep, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to review what it is that Lisa Oliveira sent us from the Fresno Clovis, the Fresno Convention Visitors Bureau. But if you haven't, let me just kind of point out to you what some of our comments may be reflecting, is that she says that she did a little bit of a survey and some digging, and she made contact with Fairfield, Best Western, Homewood, Hampton, Courtyard, and Home 2, and they all said that they are running out of parking spots on a weekly basis. Now, she did say that there were a handful of properties that said they never had a problem, and that was Town Place, Comfort Suites, La Quinta, and Holiday Inn Express. I don't know who she talked to at these locations. She just said that she had talked to them. And I thought that you said that you were the builder of Courtyard?
Correct.
And what was the other one?
Town Place.
Town Place.
Yeah,
okay.
Town Place.
So Courtyard said that
we also have the Holiday Inn.
I'm sorry?
We also have a Holiday Inn.
Okay. The Holiday Inn Express?
Correct.
Okay, so apparently, whoever it was she talked to at Town Place and Holiday Inn Express said they've never had a problem, and yet these others, including Courtyard, said that they run out of parking spots on a weekly basis. So I just wanted you to be fully informed that when we're talking about this up here, we have some information that you may not have already had.
Yeah, so the Holiday Inn that she's referring to isn't the one that we own. We own the one on Jensen and 99.
Oh, gotcha.
I believe the one she's referring to is on Shaw and Helm next to our Town Place.
Okay. Okay. So it just seems like there's a mix here between these folks that she's contacted. Some saying they're run out of parking spots on a weekly basis, which we do not want, of course. And then others say they never had a problem. And I don't know how to identify, you know, what the issues here. Maybe some of them are on Shaw and some of them are on Clovis Avenue. But regardless, I didn't want you to be... Yeah, well, I mean, her comments are pretty interesting because the old general manager of Fairfield Inn, we actually employ her now, and we asked her today if she had ever had any issues because she was there for a couple of years, and she said she's never had an issue. And regarding the other hotels, we tried to count the parking stalls to room ratio, and I don't think we were getting the 1.2 for 1, so I'm not sure where the disconnect there is. I believe the Home 2 was built after the fact, and that land maybe was used as parking prior to the construction, and now they've just gone and built another hotel on top. I'm not too sure of the details, but from my understanding, it's never been an issue, and okay. She's more than welcome to comment on it as she has, right, which we can't. Right. I just didn't want you to. Yeah. I just wanted you to know the information that we had because she's not speaking here tonight. I understand. She just gave us a letter. And there's also another Town Place in the area that she may have contacted, and it might not have been ours. Okay. So all right. We don't know which one she's referring to. So.
Sure. Dave, what's the ratio in Fresno?
1 for 1.
1 space, 1 room.
And they also only require 18-foot by 9-foot stalls.
Okay.
Or 18 by 9, I think it was. Yeah. I mean, not everyone has a truck.
Yeah, there's a difference between Clovis parking spaces and Fresno parking spaces.
We got
you can tell by the door dings.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Yeah, Fresno has 18 by 9, and Clovis is 20 by 10.
Right.
So your guys' stores are bigger.
I like Clovis' size. Anything else you want to?
Not from me. John?
Anyone else wishing to comment?
That's our architect, Robert Davidson and John Frame.
Good evening, Council. Thanks for having us. Yeah, as an architect with R.L. Davidson here in Clovis, my background also includes over 30 years of hotel design with another architect here in Fresno. I was involved in many hotels in Fresno, up and down the state, and from what I've found in my experience, the 1.2 does reduce the number of rooms that we're allowed to have. Probably if you take a 100-room hotel, you'd probably lose 10. You probably add 10 rooms if you went back to 1-to-1 parking. So that's just on 100 rooms. Yeah, I don't have anything else other than that to add. But yeah, we would increase the number of rooms by changing the parking ratio, definitely.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to comment on this item? Anyone on the web?
No.
Okay, do we want to give staff direction? It's not an action item.
Yeah. You know, Dave, I think I would like more information because I think what is important with Lisa's email is that were there exceptions to any of these hotels where it was a 1-to-1, so that's why they are overparked. That will give us a very clear picture. Or, no, they're all 1 to 1.2, and then if they're still overparked, then okay, validates that, you know, we still need the extra parking. I would like something like that in which you can bring something with concrete numbers to us so that way we can decide the matter sooner rather than during a update of the ordinances, so that way we can put this matter to sort of to rest to see if we need to do an ordinance amendment or if what we have is fine, because I know that there's hotels listed, but we don't know what was the requirement, because I hear that there are exceptions per the CUP potentially as well, where they can reduce it.
Yeah, we took a look at the last 5 years of CUPs for hotels. There were 5 approved during that time. One of those was just recently approved, so 4 either built or under construction. One of those requested a reduction and received a reduction to a 1-to-1 ratio, basically because there were no accessory uses like restaurants or meeting rooms as part of that facility. So it was granted a site-specific parking reduction. The other 4 for the hotels were approved at the standard 1.2. The most recently approved, just for transparency, the most recently approved project that's not yet even in the building permit phase was given a little bit of a reduction for the accessory restaurant use in order to kind of balance the parking, but the hotel itself has the standard ratio. And if there's consensus or direction, I'm not sure, take action.
When building a hotel, can they ask for a variance to a 1-to-1, or that be something that'd be too much to overcome? Other than, did you just say that the restaurant kind of gave them a variance?
And in conjunction with a conditional use permit, the characteristics of the hotel can be factored into consideration, and a unique parking standard can be approved. We typically try to have a specific basis for a reduction incorporated. Otherwise, it can be a slippery slope where it can become a de facto standard if it's just granted without a specific reason. But
because I agree with Bong that with the TOT, if we're wasting space on stalls that are not being used, where we can have rooms that are occupied, that benefits the city, benefits us all, if the TOT is a factor. So we just heard the architect said that for a 100-room hotel, they would be losing rooms. So that's real. I would want to know, but I may not be here long enough to know.
I would think that giving the folks developing the hotels a little bit of flexibility, because it depends on the location. You look at Clovis Cole. Their parking lot is going to get impacted by downtown events. But if you have it a location further out that isn't affected, maybe that's when we could go to 1-1. But giving some flexibility to staff and the developer to have that conversation, I think, is important.
And to the degree this helps you, and Dave, in determining what the the council direction is on this, if it turns out that Lisa's figures are accurate, I have no interest in changing our ratio. So I guess I'd want to know whether, but I'm not going to be here. You do whatever you want, Dave. But I do think that if we've got a bunch of, people who are saying, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 hotels that are saying that on a weekly basis they run out parking spots, and that's a problem, right? I mean, we don't want that. So that would be my advice for what it's worth.
Short-term response?
Yeah, something like you guys know this is.
It's when you're in the middle.
Yeah, you heard mine, so I would like something to come back sooner rather than later with regards to actual numbers where you can actually do an analysis with actual what was approved and also what we see on the ground. And, Randy, if you are able to provide your numbers with regards to rooms and what the occupancy is during the weekends, and stalls, that would also be very helpful to our staff in analysis of if we want to change our ordinance to 1-to-1 or keep it at 1 to 1.2.
So
And Mayor, this is the city manager. I just want to confirm we have a consensus of the council to direct staff to go back and take a look at it and bring back information to confirm some of the data we looked at tonight, not specifically with a recommendation to change or not, but to confirm the data that we have out there, and then possibly give some alternatives to council.
Yeah, with more empirical data.
Okay.
Because it seems like the information we have, it's mostly anecdotal at this point, so. Okay. Next item, city manager's comments.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. The only thing I had was a quick update on the Historical Preservation Committee. It was approved by council in September. It was approved for 10 members. I've got 2. I'm thinking that this is probably something that'll slide into a new council, but I just wanted to give you an update that we didn't forget it. We've got 2 names, and at some point we're going to need some more names to consider appointment.
Okay. That's it? Bob, go ahead.
Thank you. Sean, don't go. Sean left. Sean, good, thank you. Hey, there was whenever I go to the barber shop, I always receive a complaint. So, I've got my hair cut this weekend. The complaint this time was that during the Clovis Fest, they moved kind of the bounce houses right there on 5th Street in front of Full of Bull and the Clovis Barber Shop. So, if we can remember next time the event comes around, whether it's Big Hat Days or Clovis Fest, if they're going to have the bounce houses, if they can be more in the middle of 5th Street, because it's not just that, I mean, you're looking up at a 2-story inflatable right in front of your building, but also the generators are pretty loud that they use there. And so if we can make sure that we can ask the chamber to adjust how those get configured, that would be helpful. The other was, I think item number 2, it was on our consent calendar. I just wanted to comment on, this is the one where we had the reappropriate carryover funding from 21-22 budget. When it came to the water capital projects and the enterprise fund, it seemed like a lot of the reason that these were carried over was limited staff availability. I think that it was really just kind of in that water area. And so maybe there was just a whole bunch of projects. But if we were having some issues with staffing in our water projects, I don't know if we can do something about that in order to, ramp up our staffing so that we can get some of these things concluded.
So, and you must be referring to like the taste and odor projects, the ozone projects.
Yeah, it says
the well treatment or the pre-treatment processes and stuff like that.
Well, yeah, there were in the water capital projects enterprise fund, there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 projects that were carried over, and all but 2 of them said because it was limited staff availability.
So that term is used also to mean that they are ongoing. So we just have that consultant under contract that's doing the studies for us.
Okay.
And so all those projects are basically in the preliminary design, and they weren't rebudgeted in the new budget year. Something we actually talked about this morning if we should do rather than just re-encumber the money through the years, which is what we typically do. But they're all moving, maybe at a snail's pace, but...
So when it says limited staff availability, I guess what I took that to mean is that we don't have enough employees to move these projects through to completion within kind of the...
Kind of like there's so much on the table right now that we wouldn't overstaff to tackle all these, because after tackling them...
What would you do with the staff?
Exactly.
I get that. And, maybe these, I don't know what the economy is going to be like in the future, but it was a little bit striking, the percentage. It was also in the community sanitation improvements as well, a significant percentage said limited staffing availability, limited staff availability. So just wanted you to know that got my attention. If you're dealing with it or you've got reasons for it that make sense, particularly related to the idea that once you hire people, we don't want to lay them off. right after our project is finished. I totally get that. But I just didn't know if we were significantly understaffed in your department. Don't look at John.
They're all moving forward, yeah.
He's well-staffed.
It's well-staffed? Okay. Thanks.
Well,
It was an excellent staff appreciation dinner last week. So great job, John, and to the committee that put it together. It was just good to see all our staff together. And it seemed like the spirits were very positive. It felt like that, at least, to everyone that I spoke with, and I'm pretty sure those who spoke with the other council members. So excellent work on that. I know that it was through email, but, you know, I really would have hoped for a final meeting with Clovis Unified before you got off the council. And if we can still pull one off, we'd love to have a joint meeting because, I mean, we have two that are leaving, and then potentially they have a couple new ones as well.
Betsy's leaving too.
Yeah, and so it's good to get one final joint meeting before the whole change of council. I know that Clovis Unified wants to wait till the new council. I'm sort of no, let's get this old council and old board together before the new council gets in. So. And then can we also look into getting the Memorial District just meet again with their board?
Yes.
And see if we can do, I know we did that once, but maybe it's a good time to revisit that. And lastly, I guess on behalf of Lynn, after the election, start the Citizens Academy again. See, yeah, I think that would be great.
Drank the Kool-Aid.
Drew? I think it's a great idea, Mark.
I also enjoyed the employee appreciation dinner. Great job by staff putting that together. It was nice to be in the same room with our employees and being able to have social time with them. That was nice and well done. That's all I have.
And Drew and I went to see the horse races.
Oh, good.
We were, I guess this time it was with the Fresno and the Clovis Day at the horse race. So
They didn't get, that's good.
So we were there with Councilmember Bredefeld, so we were there representing Clovis. And yes.
Miguel Arias there?
No.
Really?
I think, no, they were probably somewhere else. Anyway.
You can sit down in the public record box.
And yes, the employee appreciation dinner was great, and it was good that we had one after 3 years. And so kudos to all those who were responsible for putting it together, and it was bittersweet to be our last one. But it was a good event, great event. So that's all I have, and we'll adjourn our meeting.